going on, everyone? It's the Clumsy Shark here, back with another Rating Climb episode. We're in this series, ELO ratings, and see how many games we can win, and hopefully make it all the way to a really good ELO. So we'll be playing some rapid chess, and let's get into it. So our first game is against Eugenio. We'll be playing with the black pieces. Let's reply with the Scandinavian defense, where we immediately challenge the center with with d5, and we challenge the e4 pawn. This is just the classic lines where they just immediately take, and we'll just develop our knight, putting pressure here. Your opponents could either develop or defend this pawn. Um, let's just offer another pawn for kind of a quick gambit here. Because if they do decide to take our pawn, we can quickly develop our bishop here. And then we can also just quickly develop our knight, develop potentially our bishop, castle, and then we'll have this nice, well, yeah, we'll have the just kind of nice development. We should be careful also when castling, potentially we can either castle queen or king side. Let's just go for nice developing moves here. And we could even potentially put our knight here, which would actually be really good because this square is actually an outpost, since our knight would actually only be challenged by this bishop. And let's just castle kingside. We could potentially even get our we could potentially even get our bishop kind of involved. Another move we could do is just line the queen like this. We'll protect our knight, but we also create kind of this battery where we can kind of just challenge this bishop. However, looking at this, this would actually not be a good move. Actually, no, this is a good move now, because then potentially we can just start developing our pieces. What am I saying? No, not develop pieces. We could just start getting our pieces into the action. We could potentially even go for kind of an attack here on the queen side. So that's probably kind of what the plan will be. Let's just start kind of attacking the queen side. If our opponent decides to actually castle, we always can just play this move. Let's remove kind of that bishop and create potentially light square weaknesses. And our opponent decides to take it. So now our queen is kind of facing kind of the king. So we have ideas because we could potentially bring in our knight to the g4 square and potentially not even threaten mate actually because that knight would be defending it. So our opponent decides to attack our queen, which is a good move. So what we want to do here is basically definitely retreat or put our queen back to safety. So these squares are not good. I mean, potentially we for like a trade of queens, and then I could get my knight to the edge of the board, but let's try to keep our queens off. Let's try to keep the queens on the board. Potentially even here, because we are attacking this knight, which would be actually no, not even. That's not a really good move. Let's just move our safety. We could potentially always just develop this knight and reposition it, and we also have potentially like a discovered attack. We can always challenge this knight and just make it move, which is kind of what we'll do. Let's think of potentially what our opponent would like to do. Potentially would like to reposition um the knight, but who knows? Let's challenge this knight, potentially forcing it to like move away. And we kind of repositions that knight here. We don't want to go for trade because potentially we don't want to give his rooks the open file. Um, Let's just potentially develop our rooks. This is what kind of we'll do. We'll just develop our rooks to the center of the board. But then we can also always just develop our knight. He is definitely threatening this weak pawn here. So this will be the plan actually. Let's just move our queen back to safety. We'll just protect this pawn. We can always move our knight here, which will be defended by the queen. Can always challenge this bishop. Then that theoretically wouldn't be a good trade, because it would allow him to have actually good center. So I don't know. Um, let's just gain some tempo against this knight. We can always just even continue pushing our pawn. Now that knight's technically, yeah, attacked twice. Um, we could always, yeah, that actually would be a really good move. We could always, because potentially if we do trade here, and he takes, we could win a bit of tempo here. You know what? We'll play our rook here, kind of eyeing the queen, because here if we take the knight, they can't really retake, so we'll still be up a piece. So we're kind of potentially forcing our opponent to just trade knights here, and which would actually just make my bishop even more active on this beautiful diagonal. We could even force our opponent technically to double their pawns if they decide potentially to move their knight. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did not take into account that this pawn was actually defended by the yeah, by the bishop. It's going and then that this other knight's just there. Um, let's just think about what are the weaknesses. This is a weakness. So how can we take advantage of that square? And potentially, let's just move the. We're attacking this weakness because this pawn is not defended. If they decide to move it, we can always take, and they can't retake because of our rook here, and we can always just retake. So he's kind of forcing, yeah, he's forcing it. Potentially couldn't really move here. Um, and potentially here. Let's see. Why would he move? If we take, he can't retake. So let's just take. He can't retake because his pawn is pinned to his queen, and potentially he will have to move one of his pieces away, because if he doesn't move one of these two minor pieces away, it's just a fork to these two pieces. So let's see what our opponent decides to do. What are other potential moves he could do? Decides to move his reposition his knight, which is a good move, yeah. What are potential weaknesses we can take advantage of? So we can take this square right here, which will attack this pawn and this bishop. This doesn't seem like a bad idea. Let's potentially not blunder anything. And we'll not forget this pawn is still pinned. So if he ever thinks this is a free pawn, hmm, hmm. But let's think, because we can always just reposition our knight here, just for safety, and potentially just decide to move our queen here and move our knight back here. Let's just move our knight. Let's just move our knight here. Can't take it because the pawn is still pinned. Yeah, can't take this knight because the pawn is still pinned. If he ever decides to move his queen, we should still remember that we can just move our pawn away. But still, if he ever decides to move this pawn, there's actually potentially even a discovered just attack, yeah. Interesting move by my opponent. Potentially he's just afraid that I'll just move here, but I think this is just a free pawn, technically, and potentially even already threatening checkmate here. Actually. This is not a bad. This is not bad, actually. This is actually. Could we? But I don't really want to force a trade of queens, do I? We can always just move the queen back to safety. Where's a square that would attack a lot of things? These squares are unavailable. These squares are unavailable. That's not a good square. That's a bad square. Let's bring our queen back to safety. Our opponent definitely has a potentially more than 2-minute advantage on us, which is not really what we want, but it is what it is. Now we have to remember that actually this is where remember the queen now is no this pawn is no longer pinned. So is there a move that we could potentially just attack the queen while also defending? Because but what is he thinking here? Potentially attacking this, but this pawn is protected. He definitely wants to go on the offensive. Uh, but let's think. Let's think. Let's think. What is a good square for a knight? This is not a good square. This is not a good square. Hmm. I mean, we can always just reposition it here and potentially find like another square. Even though we could potentially always just attack the queen, gain a bit of tempo. Um, Fuck. Let's try. Oh, and I just hung this pawn. I just hung this pawn. Well, that's just fucking great. That's just amazing. I cannot believe it. Gotta be kidding me. And that's how the position will crumble. That's how the position will crumble. Ah! Potentially go there, and then it's just a quick, easy checkmate. Can always potentially just call. You know what? Let's try and gain a bit of tempo against the queen, but actually find something that works. It's so annoying. And he just walks into a fork, I believe, with the knight forking the king and the queen. But I think he still has time advantage, so he'll probably end up winning. And he resigned. Let's go. Let's go. So there we go. We got a win. We just gained 10, kind of played a very average game, I'd say. There are definitely some mistakes made there, but yeah, just by gaining a tempo against the queen, it kind of forced our opponent into a worse position, and we forked his king and queen, which allowed us to win because our opponent resigned after this. So, if you enjoyed this video, then consider dropping a like on it. And if you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting content. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out!